The global warming conspiracy. The greenhouse effect is a description of what happens when gases in the atmosphere retain heat from the Earth's surface and result in a global increase in the Earth's temperature, known as global warming. Greenhouse effect. Sunlight from the sun passes through the Earth's atmosphere and then rebounds off the Earth's surface upwards. Most of this infrared upward heat energy is absorbed by greenhouse gases. Much human activity leads to an increase in the levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The increased levels of greenhouse gases result in an increase of infrared heat absorbed and thus the climate of the greenhouse, that is planet Earth, leading to an increase in temperature. Most climate scientists believe that the increase in the greenhouse effect is what results in an increase in global warming. The main gases that contribute to the greenhouse effect are nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. Fossil fuels are cited as the worst offenders in increasing the amount of greenhouse gases, GHGs, in the atmosphere, as they result in an increase in carbon dioxide. Thus the focus on climate change has been on renewable sources of energy. Global warming is a scam. It goes without question that the majority of people do believe in global warming. But it's not quite as far out as alien reptiles and mind control. There is considerable evidence to the contrary by reputable, scientific and political figures. There are some facts about global warming which make the worry about global warming sound quite preposterous. The rise in temperature since 1850 is only 0.8 degrees. The majority of this warming happened before the 1940s, which entailed a significant increase in the industrial burning of fossil fuels. Computer models based on the greenhouse theory have never been verified by temperature records. If a theory contradicts reality, the theory must be wrong. The Earth has been at a higher temperature for 95% of the time in the last 100 million years. There have been previous times when the temperature has risen at a faster rate than what it has done in the past century. The other planets in the solar system are warming, and these planets obviously have no human activity and thus no increase in carbon dioxide. Anti-climate changers will also often reference the fact that there is simply no way of knowing how hot or cold the Earth was when historical records were not present, and there was surely no way to measure the level of greenhouse gases and other chemicals in the atmosphere. 97% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is accounted for by nature, and not by human activity. The findings of a NASA study have found that Earth has actually cooled in areas of mass industrialization, the implication being that the burning of fossil fuels actually cooled the areas. In the Ordovician age, the age of ice, CO2 emissions were 12 times larger than they are today. The response to the idea that the ice caps are melting is that the ice caps have always melted. The Earth spins on its axis, with more water in the southern hemisphere and more land in the north. There is a constant search for equilibrium with an accompanying oscillation. Over the next 20 years, the water in the Arctic will once again solidify to form the ice caps. Another theory is that methane is a much more important GHG than CO2 in relation to global warming. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have indicated that methane is 86 times more potent at warming the atmosphere than CO2 if a 20-year time horizon is used as opposed to a 100-year time horizon. The 100-year time horizon that influences policymakers indicates that methane is roughly 21 times as potent as CO2. There is an effort underway to influence policymakers to use both time horizons, so the effects of methane are not underestimated. Global warming is not caused by GHG emissions. It has been claimed that even though climate change is real, it has not been caused by GHG but by other factors. Solar irradiance has been cited as a possible factor which could have led to an increase in the Earth's temperature. If the temperature of the sun rises, it is only reasonable to assume that this will affect the temperature of the Earth. However, There is much evidence that this solar irradiance is not the cause of global warming. However, the theory underpinning global warming is that there has been a rapid rise in temperature in the last couple of decades. Second, any scientific models that have tried to replicate solar irradiance cannot account for the increase in temperature unless GHGs are included. It has also been contended that water vapor is the major player in climate change and not CO2/fossil fuels. The basis for this is that NASA studies have confirmed that water vapor plays a larger role in the increase or decrease of the Earth's temperature. However, water vapor is a function of the Earth's temperature, it does not cause Earth's temperature. Thus, water vapor will have an amplifying effect of a temperature increase caused by an increase of CO2 from fossil fuels. An important response to this, however, is that all the computer models which project global warming based on this amplification have never been historically verified, even with higher levels of CO2. Global warming, a tool for the elites. Any major topic is inevitably linked to Illuminati control. The idea is that global warming is a mass conspiracy where the science has been conducted fraudulently. What is notable is that prominent politicians and scientists seem swayed. On top of this, more than 31,000 scientists, including over 9,000 PhDs, signed a petition in 1997 that global warming is a hoax, and that there should be no limits on GHG emissions. Petition purpose: to demonstrate that the claim of settled science and an overwhelming consensus in favor of the hypothesis of human-caused global warming and consequent climatological damage is wrong. A major criticism of the climate change industry is its inefficiency. Even aside from the science of whether or not climate change is real, the economic effects are absolutely disastrous. The climate change industry wastes up to $1.5 trillion a year in taxpayer money. This is a very, very large amount of money even on an international scale. It is almost the same as the total amount spent on the online shopping industry. And it is argued, mainly by businessmen, politicians and industrialists as opposed to conspiracy theorists, that the costs are quite simply unjustifiable. Windmills are often cited as an example of the inefficiency of climate change. Wind energy would not survive without government subsidies because no one would pay the extortionate price for them. Global warming is obvious and real. 8 out of the last 10 years, as of 2016, have been the warmest in Earth's history. There have been more hurricanes, droughts, earthquakes, wildfires and flooding in general. Sea levels have risen twice as much in the last decade as they have in the last century. Ice caps, glaciers and the Arctic sea ice are all shrinking. The amount of carbon dioxide is increasing by about 2 billion tons per year. There is too much evidence to indicate that the world is heating up and is causing these phenomena. A neutral view. It is, at the very least, the most probable cause at present to explain the phenomena we are currently seeing. There is no conspiracy theory. Climate change is a complex topic, and thus has led to debate and controversy. However, its effects are not as well known or studied as often claimed, and it is definitely blown out of proportion. All projections made about global warming are done with the assumption that CO2 output levels remain the same, and conditions stay the same. However, technology is increasing at an exponential rate, which means that any day now a means of energy could be invented that is renewable and renders the whole fossil fuel dilemma completely redundant. Any model which aims to predict the future has failed, and despite what is told, projections to the years 2040, 2050 and beyond are simply ridiculous. Because no matter how logical and sensible the theory is at the present time, in a couple of years new findings will render the past projection completely invalid. New technologies/game changers/black swans will emerge to spin the theory off or generate a new way of looking at things. This happens in medicine, physics, economics and practically every profession. And climate change is no exception. Finally, The approach by politicians and governments to battle global warming have been a catastrophic disaster and a complete and utter waste of money. The amount of money spent is unjustifiable. The attempt to generate renewable energy through windmills a miserable failure and no notable progress made whatsoever.